Okay, good evening, everyone. And thank you, Pastor John, for inviting me to speak on this evening of solemn solidarity, learning and remembrance to commemorate Kristallnacht, a series of pogroms that took place exactly 85 years ago, as Yankee already pointed out, when ordinary citizens throughout the German Reich joined the paramilitary wings of the Nazi Party in a feverish orgy of violence against ordinary Jewish people in their homes, businesses, and synagogues. During that very dark period of history, which many people consider to be the beginning of the Holocaust, evil spread because ordinary people chose to be silent. The Ireland-Israel Alliance, which I founded in 2018, was set up in order to give a voice to Irish citizens who choose not to be silent. And I invite you to join us in raising your voices. In 1938, the Jewish people didn't have a state. They were hated because of their ethnicity. Today, that same spirit of hatred is also channeled against their nation state, Israel. For Jewish people, the promise of never again means that never again do they have to put their safety and security in the hands of others, no matter how civilized they seem. And as my Jewish friend Forrest Rain in Israel tells me, but Israel was not founded because of the Holocaust. The Jewish people had a Holocaust because there was no one to defend them. For non-Jewish people, never again was supposed to be a promise to never again remain silent while Jews were being abused, tortured, and slaughtered. For non-Jewish people, never again was supposed to be a promise to not remain silent in the face of evil, to never again turn away and pretend they don't see what's happening, no matter how intimidated they may be of those committing the atrocities or of their supporters. Which brings us to Saturday morning of 7th of October, which I will bring up, when some 3,000 Hamas murderers breached the Gaza border fence in 15 different places and invaded Israel on motorcycles, pickup trucks, and hang gliders under the cover of thousands of rockets, in scenes reminiscent of the worst of ISIS, when they brutally slaughtered 1,400 innocent Israelis in their own homes and at a music festival, when the most defenseless amongst them were taken as hostages, babies, toddlers, children, and old people, including Holocaust survivors. And the righteous war of self-defense that Israel is subsequently fighting, a war that Israel didn't start or want, is a harsh reminder of that promise that non-Jewish people made to never again remain silent. Those devastating atrocities to which the whole world has been witness continues to cause much heartache and despair for all of us. And making the situation all the more difficult is the challenging international diplomacy battle that has ensued, with many in positions of the highest authority spreading misinformation, calling for boycotts, divestments, and sanctions of Israel, dehumanizing Israelis and Jews alike, and gaslighting them into believing that somehow they are to blame. I have been visiting Israel very regularly since 2003, And like many Christians from around the world, including Ireland, I usually go to Israel for the Feast of Tabernacles, the most joyful festival in the Jewish calendar, when the Jewish people go up to Jerusalem, not only to remember God's provision in the wilderness, but to look ahead to the time when all the nations will flow to Jerusalem to worship the Lord. And so I was in Jerusalem on Saturday, the 7th of October. And like so many others who were in Israel on that morning, I was awoken just before 7 a.m. to the sound of the red alert sirens on my phone, warning of incoming rockets. Because of my work with the Alliance, I have the Red Alert app on my phone. That holy Sabbath morning, now often referred to as the Black Sabbath or Black Saturday, is traditionally a very special day for the Jewish people. That day, immediately after Feast of Tabernacles ends, the 8th day, is known as Simchat Torah, which is the Hebrew term for joy of the Torah. It is the day when the Jewish people celebrate the joy they have in the Torah. And for those who are not familiar, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. So that's Genesis to Deuteronomy. So it's usually a day when there is much dancing and celebration, because the yearly cycle of reading the Torah is completed and begun anew, symbolizing the cycle of life, the continuous process of learning, and of gratitude for receiving God's wisdom. The meaning behind this day serves as the foundation of the civilized world as we know it, of Christianity, and is the basis of our Judeo-Christian heritage. And that, my friends, is the day when Hamas chose to attack Israel on Simchat Torah. And so I am convinced that not only is a military and public diplomacy battle being fought, but a spiritual one too. And that this ancient battle, with its roots in Genesis, is a battle that continues to be fought from generation to generation. And I believe that those of us who profess to be grafted into the root should not only raise our hands in prayer, like Moses did when Joshua waged war against Amalek, but that we must not remain silent in the face of evil. When Pastor John asked me to speak this evening, I thought it might be a good idea to bring a personal testimony from Israel. So I asked my Jewish Israeli friend, Forrest Rain, who lives in Haifa. Her best friend's daughter was murdered and burnt at the music festival. This is what she told me. Quote, "When we heard that Michal was missing, we didn't know what to hope for. She, like so many other young Israelis, had attended the music festival attacked by Hamas on October 7th. It is really hard to know what is better. Is it preferable to be alive, terrorized and brutalized, held in inhumane conditions in Gaza? Or is it better to be dead?" Almost a week after the massacre, the knock on the door came. Michal had been found. She's dead. Jewish tradition dictates that the dead must be buried before nightfall on the day of death. The fact that so much time passed is horrifying in and of itself. Hamas terrorists slaughtered so many Israelis that it is difficult to go through the process of identifying them, notifying their families, and bringing them to a proper burial. Worse, many of the bodies were mutilated in such horrific ways that it is necessary to use DNA testing to identify them. I hope to God that it took so long to identify Michal because she was shot in the face or among those who were blown up, and not because she was among those tortured and mutilated. A hole exists where Michal is supposed to be. In a single day, more than 1,400 such holes were ripped out of the fabric of our nation. We are such a tiny people. No one is untouched by this. I can't wrap my mind around the enormity of the atrocity our nation is experiencing. I can barely comprehend that the little girl I once knew, the girl the same age as my boys, is dead, murdered. I feel soul sick. Crimes against humanity is too mild and technical a term to describe the atrocities they committed. They stole money from the wallets of the people they murdered, looted their homes, taking everything from TVs to tractors, identity cards and passports. And then they took as many hostages as they could get their hands on, including babies and elderly people, entire families, even dead bodies. They came with maps and details about homes, how many people in each family, whether there was a dog or not, all spelled out by individual Gazans who Israelis had employed for years doing construction work and odd jobs in their communities. They didn't come as an army trying to conquer an enemy state, soldiers fighting against soldiers. They came as a tidal wave of death to exterminate everything living in its path, and before doing so, humiliate and create as much suffering as possible. They know that we love life and hold it sacred. They know that we honor the dead, putting supreme importance on respectful burial. This is why they hurt us where it would be most painful. They violated the sanctity of our homes, showing that Jews are not safe anywhere. They violated our past, terrorizing Holocaust survivors and bringing the Holocaust into the present with fire and sending Jews into hiding, where they had to hold their hands over the mouths of their babies, praying that they wouldn't make a sound so the monsters wouldn't find them. They committed mass rapes of women, grandmothers, and children as more than a byproduct of vicious bloodlust. In the context of people who come from an honor culture, this is the deepest violation, the theft of our honor, a display of utter disgust and domination, dirtying our beloved, grinding them into the earth, and mocking our men who were not able to save them. Dismembering bodies, scattering them, and burning people is not just a matter of gruesome cruelty. The terrorists were given deliberate instructions to commit these acts by people who know us well, and they deliberately used everything we care about most to hurt us. And after all this, around the world, we're seeing people marching in the streets, chanting their support for the Hamas massacre. Jews are being marked in civilized countries, homes marked with stars of David, businesses smashed, and students humiliated and abused because they are Jews. End quote. During Kristallnacht, and indeed the Holocaust, evil spread because good people chose to be silent. If we keep silent, We are enabling and strengthening evil. We now have a chance to do better, to do things differently. I will conclude with a quote from the late, great Rabbi Sacks from a speech he gave to the European Parliament in 2016. He said then, "The hate that begins with the Jews never ends with the Jews. This is what I want us to understand today. It wasn't Jews alone who suffered under Hitler. It wasn't Jews alone who suffered under Stalin. It wasn't Jews alone who suffer under ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Islamic Jihad. We make a great mistake if we think anti-Semitism is a threat only to Jews. It is a threat, first and foremost, to Europe and to the freedoms it took centuries to achieve." End quote. Let us then remember that quote, especially as we consider that many of those murdered, missing and taken hostage by Hamas on the 7th of October were foreign nationals from 40 different states, including Ireland, namely Kim Damty, whose life was taken ruthlessly, and 8-year-old Emily Hand, an Irish citizen held captive by Hamas. May the memories of all those who perished be a blessing. May the missing continue to be identified, and may the hostages be returned to their families as quickly as possible. So my message to you really today, tonight, is please don't be silent. Never again is now.